Good evening. It is 5:30 on Monday, February 10th, 2020, and I'll call this Committee of the Whole of the Lansing City Council to order. Please have the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Present.
Councilmember Hussein. Here. Councilmember Wood. Here. Councilmember Spitzley. Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Garza. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Betts. Here.
Thank you. Quorum is present. First things first, we need a motion to approve the minutes from January 27th, 2020. Mr. Vice President.
I move the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from January 27th, 2020 as presented.
It's been moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment this evening? Very good. First up, we have a presentation from Raymond Robson, the City of Lansing's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Ms. Fryer, you're up.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay? Is that better?
It's better.
Better?
Yeah.
Should I yell into it? Is that good? I have Paul Matz here from Raymond Robson, who is going to present our CAFR for the fiscal year 19.
The green light's on.
It looks like it.
Slack on that cable.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Fantastic. I do see that. As usual, the audit brought out the standing room only crowd. It's not uncommon for it to do so. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Matz with Raymond, and I'm pleased to present the results of the audit for the year ended June 30 of 2019. And I did want to take just a moment to thank Shelby and thank the finance team. The audit process got started a little bit later this year than what it historically has. And it was really a tremendous collaborative effort amongst their finance team to pull the information necessary to be able to issue the audit prior to the state of Michigan deadline. So I just would encourage you to thank them also for the incredible effort that goes into the audit process and for the cooperation that we received. As just a quick little piece of background information, our goal as part of the financial statement audit is to make sure that the financial statements are accurately stated in all material respects. We do a number of tests of transactions, of balances. We don't look at every single transaction that takes place at the city during the year. We set thresholds of materiality. We do samples for our testing. We identify areas that may be more risky in our opinion and sort of design our audit tests accordingly. Ultimately, then, at the conclusion of the audit, we issue our opinion on the financial statements as to whether we feel that they are accurately stated. Keep in mind that, the one document that's really ours within the CAFR is our independent auditor's report, that opinion. The financial statements are those statements that are prepared by management that we go ahead and assist with putting in this formal format. As part of the audit also, where we identify any findings, any weaknesses in the system of internal controls, we will point those out as well. In addition to any general comments, recommendations, we will share those with you as well. So for the year ended June 30 of 2019, what you would see very early in the financial statement is our independent auditor's report, and we have issued the clean, unmodified opinion for the audit. In other words, yes, we believe that these financial statements are accurately stated. We can't provide a higher level of assurance than that clean, unmodified audit opinion. Regarding the audit results, the findings, the matters that we felt needed to be communicated, there were 3 items that we considered the terminology are material weaknesses for the year ended June 30 of 2019. And 2 of those items are comments that have actually carried forward from last year and the last couple of years also. And what those findings related to, and they're in this document, it's referred to as the schedule of findings and responses. There were 3 items that we listed. One of them was on audit adjustments and the availability of a reasonably adjusted trial balance at the beginning of the audit process. Obviously, there was much turnover that took place during the year, And, the information was not adjusted on a timely basis, and there was auditor assistance needed with some audit adjustments.
Mr. Matz?
Yes.
Before you go on, Councilmember Spitzley has a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. What is the definition of a material weakness?
The definition is, and do you have a copy of the reports in front of you? Because I can refer you also to where it is.
Well, I'm asking you because there's other, for the. people.
Absolutely, okay, yeah, absolutely.
Thank
So a material weakness is defined as a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. The second item that we noted in that regard was regarding the preparation and submission of pension and other post-employment benefit information. Again, the information was not submitted to the actuary on a timely basis near the end of the fiscal year. There were a number of adjustments that needed to take place with that information also. And then that's also a comment that was carried over from the prior year. The third item that we noted was regarding preparation and review of bank reconciliations. We feel that, bank reconciliations are a critical component of each month close and certainly at the end of the fiscal year. And there was, a significant gap in time between when the reconciliations had last taken place. And just due to that significance, we wanted to be sure to point that item out to you also. I do want to make mention, though, we do have these items, and, some of them are noted as repeat comments. I will share with you that based on the interactions we've had during this audit field work, I can say with a high level of confidence that I don't anticipate those items to be repeated, or at least very significant progress being made on those next year, just based on what we have observed through the audit process this year.
Councilmember Wood.
In looking at a report that had been put together by our internal auditor, and looking back at some of the items that you just mentioned, we have dates that go back to 2014 of where you've made some of these comments. You've sat before us numerous times and actually said that you believe that based on the information that you have and working with at that time Ms. Bennett, that these items were being addressed and taken care of. I'm just a little bit, concerned that we're hearing the same thing. We're seeing these repeat items. I realize that we have a different person at the helm now, but these were the same statements that you've made to us over the years. Do you wish to comment on that?
Can I comment first before he does?
Councilmember Spitzley.
I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in on hers. When you just said your statement, I leaned over to Councilmember Wood because I find that statement just fantastic because, it's supposed to be an independent audit, and you have said that. I've been here, this is my 5th year starting, and you've said that before, and so to say it here this time again, I just find it, I find it fantastic. And so I am also concerned about the consistent deficiencies that have been, outlined over and over again. They've been the same ones for the 4 years that I've been here anyways, and so I don't have the level of confidence that you have, and so I am looking to, as if Shelby makes her statement, I'm looking for concrete statements and steps about how this is not going to happen again. I don't have that degree of certainty because I've heard it for the past 4 years. Thank you.
Okay.
One comment I'll make in that regard is I know that as part of our recommendation in these comments, we have commented that we recommended that the city critically assess the staffing levels in the finance department. I know that was expressed as one of our concerns. And so part of the commentary, I know that we had received in the past is that, that was being looked at. So I know, taking that word that was being critically assessed was part of our consideration in that regard.
Councilmember Wood.
Well, again, I'm looking at just the reconciliation of bank statements. That comment was made in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. And we had heard each time in reports that, and if I had those with me that I could pull out, from then Finance Director Ms. Bennett, that they were working at resolving those issues. So my question to you would be, when you have a repeat comment and you come back the next year, how do you assess whether there has been any progress or what hasn't been done, and how do you address that?
All we could really do is we do review every item that we report in the previous year. That is one of the audit steps, is to follow up on to see what corrective action, if any, was taken on those comments. If there's not been appropriate corrective action, we're required to repeat those comments until sufficient corrective action has taken place. But certainly it's management's responsibility to identify what that corrective action would be, and to follow through on it. But certainly we've followed up, as is evidenced by the repeat of those comments, to see if the corrective action has taken place.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
There are a couple of items in the comprehensive annual financial report that, as much as you may want to go through every single of the 217 pages in detail, I'll try to keep it a little bit more high level. But there's a couple of sections of that I wanted to bring your attention to, and they actually all fall pretty early in that report. One of them is a transmittal letter. The transmittal letter, I think, is helpful because it provides a little bit more narrative information on some of the accomplishments. It's not just number-driven, but there's actually some information on what was done with the use of funds during the year. So I think that's an important item to point out. You would also find our independent auditors report near the front of those financial statements. And again, that's where we've issued the unmodified audit opinion. And then finally, there's a section, again, early on in the report called the management's discussion and analysis. This section provides a high-level summary of the financial results for the year. There's comparative information to last year as well. There's some charts and some graphs, so it can be a little bit easier to read, easier to digest than the full 217-page report. Management helps with some information on fluctuations from one year to the next, so I think it just provides a good high-level summary of the financial results for the year. So from the audit perspective, those are the items I was hoping to highlight, but I would be happy to answer any additional questions or touch on any particular area in more detail.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just looking back at the report, kind of first few page summaries, there's a few parts, and this is kind of going back to Councilwoman Wood and Councilwoman Spitzley's comments. In compliance and other matters, there's language that says, providing an opinion on compliance with those provisions was not an objective of our audit. And at the bottom, last paragraph, it says that it's not to provide an opinion on the effectiveness of the city's internal control or on compliance. I guess I just wonder, is it just something that your company does not do, or is it specifically negotiated, or is it any reason just for that?
That is simply the accounting standards. Any and all audit firms essentially have the exact same reporting, and that would be true for every single audit organization. It's not a company-by-company decision. It's simply the audit standard, how they've been developed.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. But you did just say, it was your opinion that you thought they were on the right track and that these things would be addressed, right?
Yes, we don't provide a report that says you have a sufficient system of internal controls, because the system of internal controls could always get better. What I will share is from what we observed and the effort that went into completing the audit on time and the diligence and the communication in that regard, I have a high level of confidence that the audit process next year will be much smoother than what it's been in years past.
Okay, one more question, Mr. President. What's the next, so you told us what the definition is of a material weakness, and you said that, you make that statement, and so what happens after that material weakness has not been addressed over multiple years? Because that's what's happened here. It's been over multiple years that the same material weakness has not been addressed. So what's the remedy?
From an audit reporting perspective, there are levels of audit comments and audit findings. There are general other matters, which is what I would describe as ways to improve operational efficiency, perhaps. Not what we would really consider a deficiency, but an area for potential improvement. The next level is called a significant deficiency. That's sort of in the middle. And then the very highest level is material weakness. There is no way to report a matter for a higher level of significance than calling it a material weakness.
Even if it's year after year the same?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
That is correct.
Councilmember Wood?
How long have you had a contract with the city of Lansing?
It's my understanding that we haven't had a formal contract as far as a 3 or a 5 year type arrangement. It's been an annual agreement for the last several years.
Okay, when you say several, 10, 20?
I have been part of the audit or part of the firm since 2009, and I believe we've been the auditors for that duration. I can't speak to before that.
All right, thank you. The next question I have for you is, when you were doing the audit, did you audit any of the HUD funds?
So the HUD funds are subject to the single audit, which is a compliance audit, and that is actually in process at this time.
Okay.
That's required to be completed by the end of March.
The end of March?
Mhm.
Okay. What fund did you pull out to do, I know you, as you indicated, you don't audit every single one, and I have asked you this question before.
Mm-hmm.
What fund did you do your spot audit on?
I don't know that I could describe a spot audit of a particular fund. We touch on every fund essentially through some, we audit pooled cash, and pooled cash effectively hits all of the funds. So there's not one particular fund that we paid a spot check or a surprise check. We do design unpredictability procedures as part of the audit, so we're not focusing on solely the same areas year after year. But I couldn't point to a particular fund that we did a spot audit of in this year.
Did you look at the parking fund this year? The enterprise fund?
Yes, that is certainly part of the audit.
Okay, so that was reviewed.
Correct.
All right. And my last question would be, if you don't mind, Mr. President, I would like to ask the internal auditor whether there was anything in the report as he was reviewing it that, I know he provided us with a very substantial information, but he would like to highlight at this time.
Sure, can we get through a few other council member questions? Then
Yes.
Up with the internal auditor? Okay, very good. Councilmember Betts?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for being here today. I'm going to steal some language from our internal auditor. I'm going to ask you if you agree with it or not, and what you see as some rectifying things that we can do for it. He says, in addition, the fiduciary net position as a percentage of the total pension liability has decreased in 4 of the previous 5 years presented. This is referring to our pension debt, reflecting 54.5% and 63.8% of the employees' retirement system and police and fire retirement system respectively. We recommend the city actively search for ways to reverse the negative trends and increase the funded status of the plans. Would you agree with his assessment?
And that assessment is actually carried from one of our communications that we have with those charged with governance. So we're actually the source of that comment. So yes, certainly I do agree.
Okay. And what would you recommend to rectify that off the top of your head?
I mean, the only options that, may be available, closing plans are options, changing the benefit provisions, making lump sum contributions. Those are some of the options, but certainly there's funding limitations that, limit what you're able to do. But it's really a management decision. It's very difficult for us to say as the auditor which of those steps or which combination of those steps that you should take.
Of course, thank you.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. My comment, and maybe it's a question, is with regard to the actual responsibility of the auditor. Because I think that what I'm hearing among some of my colleagues is, you were part of this audit, and we've had repeat problems year after year. But am I correct in assuming you're like you're the magnifying glass? You're the one that shows us what is here, and administratively and through the legislative branch, we have to fix it. Like, I'm assuming your job isn't to come in here and be the hammer and say you did something terrible. It is to point out that these situations exist, and it's the job of the city to figure out how to fix it.
And that's absolutely correct, and it's very clear in there are specific rules regarding independence, in that we have to be very careful to avoid making any management-type decisions. We can point out what we observe, but then we very much need to be hands-off on the actual resolution of those issues. That needs to be a management decision.
Okay. So, I guess my point is, for all of us who have seen these repeat scenarios, like, the questions I would be asking is, what legislatively can we do to fix this? Or how can we work with the administration to fix it? Because it is definitely not his job to fix it. It's to point it out to us. So, thank you.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree, it's not his job, but when he comes up and says he has a degree of confidence that this is going to be addressed over and over again, I think he's subject to questioning. The other thing I want to ask is, so for internal auditors, I know in the business, in some businesses, they do a turnover of auditors every 3 years is, I think, the general practice in order to get a fresh set of eyes. And so I think I was a little concerned and a little surprised that this auditing company has been looking at our books for so long. And so if there's a legislative or a suggestion then for us to do, no offense, we need to have another auditor. We need to look for another auditor and have another auditor look at our books. Having said that, the report is here, and the questions are the questions, and I think they're valid questions. So I don't know if we're going to have a chance to ask questions of Shelby, because I do have a number of questions of how the administration is going to address consistent language in audits that identify material weaknesses in the finance office. Consistently, the reasoning is we don't have enough staff. We don't have enough staff. Or we can't find staff. We can't find appropriate staff. And so, that's a concern to me, is that recurring theme has happened, and I can only go for the last 4 years I've been here. So the last 4 years I've been here, that's been a recurring theme, that the finance department has not been able to find appropriate staff to fund the office to the level that's need to be to address these efficiencies. And so I am hoping that there is going to be some sort of explanation of how you're going to address the deficiencies. And then if it is staff, I'm going to need a little bit more than we're looking for people. I need to know what steps are being taken to attract and hire the appropriate people so we can get our books in order. Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. Just a question. I don't know how it's going to come out, but how confident are you or Raymond? Did I say that right?
Raymond.
Raymond, way easier. How confident are you or Raymond in how confident are you to think that the city's excuse me, all right, I'm a little confused here. So, the city thinks it has its financial position as what it is. The budget's 219 million, we get this, we get that. How confident are you that we actually know, as a city or administration, where our finances are, given how many material weaknesses that has to do with financial reporting, which is important, and that's what we use for these numbers, are where they are for how many years they have been?
So, I mean, certainly, our opinion is the best thing I can point to, that, yes, we believe that these financial statements, as presented here, are accurately stated. Part of the reason for the comments and, the timely availability of a trial balance, where we have concern is for the information that you receive more frequently during the course of the year. If bank reconciliations are not prepared timely, certainly there are adjustments that come about through the bank reconciliation process. If those reconciliations aren't taking place, that brings into question the accuracy of the financial information that you're receiving during the course of the year. So I would say, do we believe that these financial statements are accurately stated? Absolutely. Our concern is more that, are you getting the accurate financial information during the course of the year?
I have a question if no one else does. Deputy Mayor Harkins or Ms. Fryer, when did Ms. Bennett leave?
August.
August? So what changes have happened since August? This is obviously last year's audit in that department that might address these three material deficiencies that have been identified.
I can say that the department, and Shelby, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's basically unrecognizable from where it was earlier this summer. We certainly have a new finance director. We have a budget director. Jake is here. We have a new controller. In the interim, Shelby has brought in whatever resources we've needed, including our auditors, including some outside folks to help right-size some of the challenges in the finance department. So I think that in terms of moving forward, that question is certainly a valid question. I understand that. We've made a lot of changes to ensure that moving forward, our finance department is going to be operating differently.
Ms. Fryer, do you have anything to add to that question?
Other than, I think Ms. Bennett left sometime in September, so not to make a huge
Totally
difference,
okay.
but we had a couple week really delay in figuring out where we were as it relates to audit. So when these financial statements end in June 30, for us to really start the audit process and near September, beginning of October, that's one of the things I think, Paul mentioned starting off, to say, boy, what a feat to actually pull this off. We didn't have a controller. Our second person had also left in the summer, so our finance shop was really down throughout the summer and early fall. So to just get people here has been a huge win for us. And then to have those people, I do have to give credit to Jeff Schwarnowski, our new controller. He's just totally came in and kicked butt and really got us in a better place. And I can't thank him and the rest of the finance staff enough. But without them and really pushing our auditors, having additional help and resources and people coming in to just get these things done on time was a huge win for us. So when he says that, things are going to be different next year, I wasn't here to speak to that, but I can tell you, to answer some of your questions, Councilman Spitzley, we've had we have too many banks. We have too many accounts open. So part of the reconciliation process takes so long because we just have too many. So maybe I don't need people, I just need less accounts. I mean, there's things that we can do for operational efficiencies that will make us, faster for next year and better so that we are on time. I can tell you the level of standard that I have. I can't speak to who here, was before me and what they requested, but I'm a pretty, I don't want to say demanding person, but I expect the best for my team, and we're getting it right now. So I would hope that we'd be in a better spot for next year. Can I promise all these findings will be gone for next year? No, I can't, but I do think how we fix them is definitely working with the administration and really holding the finance team and personally myself accountable for making sure that these things don't happen again.
Thank you. Council Member Dunbar.
Thank you. In the process of an audit, in addition to looking at just the numbers, do you look at filings? Do you, because one of the things that we had a problem with and that we were dealing with is timely filings of tax paperwork and things like that. Do you Do you check that in the process of an audit?
We really don't. If you think of, take cash, for example, we want there to be bank reconciliations, bank statements. We're able to test that audit area. Looking at tax filings doesn't, specifically impact the numbers in the financial statements. So no, that's outside of the scope of the audit.
Okay, and then I guess my other question to Shelby is then, what type of check and balance is being done now to make sure that those filings are all in? Because you're right, I mean, unless it's an actual filing where there was something paid and it actually hits the books, maybe you don't know, but so that we make sure that to catch it in the future, what are you doing?
So one of the things I started when I started probably a month in or so, working with the administration, both through Samantha and Nick Tate, we actually created a department schedule, not just for finance, but for all departments across the city, for not just our filings, but anybody else that would have a filing to either the state or the federal government, to make sure that we weren't missing anything. That's distributed every month at cabinet so that everyone knows the deadlines that are coming up. So as part of a management change, it's now them, making sure that those things actually get filed on time. In addition, finance has kind of a master calendar of all the things that we have coming at us to make sure we don't miss anything else. That's not to say that a report's not going to pop up that nobody knew about that gets filed once every 5 years. But again, we're trying to put those things in place so that we can make sure we aren't missing these things, especially on a repeat basis.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wood.
Do you also audit the pension fund?
We do.
Okay. So in auditing the pension fund, why was it not picked up that we had not paid into the pension, that mechanism that had been set up for 3 years?
So it's one of those areas that's very difficult to audit what we do not know exists. We were never made aware that there was such plan that was established. So, and there was nothing in the financial statements that was above a testing threshold that we looked into. And so it was simply, we were not aware that the plan existed. We were never notified that that particular plan existed.
All right, thank you.
Shelby, Ms. Fryer, how many vacancies do you have currently in the finance department?
We have one right now that exists, and it's more of an administrative assistant role. So we've filled all of our vacancies.
Thank you. Mr. Brewer, are you prepared to answer Councilmember Wood's questions and speak to your report?
It's more directed, like reading the finance statements that Catherine reviewed, the previous ones that this reference, a lot of the source material on the annual report is from Catherine. And like I said, it has a page reference or vice versa. And it's kind of like a highlight, because obviously I took the 216 pages and I condensed it down to a more palatable, and also provided graphs and comparisons. The biggest thing concerning, when you look at the general fund, the government activities, there was a large increase in the prior year. Looking at the report that I prepared on page 5 of the appendices, it appears that there was an increase in the attorney's office and also finance of a great amount. And there was can you speak about, like I said, obviously there's been a nice consistent where revenue was over the expenditures, and obviously this year it was the opposite of that. And obviously we want to make sure that we have more revenue and spend less, obviously to increase our reserves in our funds, especially the governmental funds.
Yep, absolutely. So we had about a $7 million swing, as you guys were able to pick up from my financial statements. $5 million of that $7 million was really one-time things that we don't expect to happen again. So some of the things that you just mentioned in our in the different lines in law, there was a lawsuit that happened towards the end of the year. Jim Smirka might be able to speak more about it if you guys want greater detail, but that was about a $1.2 million hit to that particular line. And then also we had some different penalties and things that were placed into the finance slide to kind of condense the one-time fees that we were charged and assessed. So they're sitting there right now. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get some of those reversed. But for right now, they're in the finance line.
Councilmember Wood.
Shelby, what is your plan for looking at doing a contract and going out and doing a bid? Could you address that?
Sure. So, sorry, Paul, but we have an RFP that's going to go out next month for auditing services. We do think it's important. Industry standard is about 3 to 5 years, and we have had Raymond for many years. They do a great job, but given just being new and wanting a fresh set of eyes, an RFP will go out. Certainly Raymond's welcome to bid, but we would ask for sure for either a new auditing team or potentially a different firm to come in and do our financial audit.
And when you indicated that all your positions were filled, are they all filled with city employees, or are some of them contract employees?
I have right now all city employees except one, and the administrative role is helping out through a contracted service.
Is this person been in that contracting position for a while? I know that in the past, there were 3 or 4 that were being contracted in the finance department that had been there for numerous years.
Nope, they've all either become employees or no longer with us. The one person that I have has been there for a handful of months in that administrative role.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions from any council members? Mr. Brewer, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
All right. Okay, next up, fiscal year, Mr. Matz, thank you for your time tonight. There's our fiscal year 2020 second quarter budget report and vacancy factor.
We'll move in close here. So before we get started here, there's a couple of documents in your packet. You'll see one is the quarterly budget update that has the vacancy report, but then also the budget amendment document should also be in your packets. Does everybody have a copy of that? There is a spreadsheet form, and then there's also a narrative form that we'll walk through tonight. So one of the things that I think is very helpful is not only just giving you a spreadsheet of numbers, but then also kind of highlighting the major changes or what's included in the document. So we're gonna walk through those. I do want to say, last time we were here for the last quarter, we talked about changing the vacancy report, the format, to be a little more user-friendly. This is certainly open for comment. If there's something that you want specifically in the report included for next time, we're certainly happy to do that. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that we've asked consistently and still have not gotten, those that, in fact, this one doesn't list which ones are contract positions. And of the contract positions, what we want to see is how much is contracted and how much is the savings. And how long has it been vacant? But those you have that on here, but we want that attached to, let's just say you had a contract position in finance and it's been vacant since, without a city employee in it, even though it's been contracted.
Mm-hmm.
It's been vacant since 7/1, 2015.
Okay.
And the salary, let's say it's been budgeted at $30,000 and you're contracting it out at $20,000, so there's a $10,000 savings. Though that's what we want to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so to start with the vacancy report, I can speak to a little bit more about that. And so between the report I submitted to you back when I first started, you'll notice that there's a number of changes. This is the result of much more significant collaboration between myself and the Human Resources Department to come up with a list of vacancies and understand how the process was submitted to you before. I'm hoping to continue to improve on this process in future quarter reports so that I can provide you sufficient information to satisfy all the needs that you have in order to make informed decisions. And so you can take a look at the individual positions that we have open. We have a vacancy in the neighborhoods and citizens engagement that has been there for a significant amount of time. Human resources, community services. Notably, the Treasury Department has a number of vacancies that they're hoping to fill coming up. We have vacancies, a number of them in public service facilities, which rotate at probably a more significant basis. Looking at the last two columns, you'll note that there's the number of FTE for each position, and then the date that the positions became vacant, and an estimated vacancy factor, not counting contracted positions or overtime, offsetting that amount at this report. But that is an estimate based on the current year and the date of the vacancy, how much salary savings we've received. Are there any questions as far as that vacancy report goes that I could provide an answer?
Councilmember Wood?
As an example, the second one that you talked about was the HRCS and the commission investigator. I know that position is a contract position right now.
Mhm.
So, but in reading this, the way this looks is if there's no one in that position, not that
Yes.
it's being contracted.
Yes.
So you're not saving $33,000 dollars because you are paying money on a contract to that position.
That is a correct estimate. I do have a small note in very fine print that savings from vacancies.
Well, this is really fine print.
It's,
We'll make
So-
the margins wider.
Yeah.
yeah, and so hopefully as I improve along this process with human resources, we can develop a report that's much more automated, that's a lot less hands in the process in order to make sure that we can provide this information on a timely basis rather than putting it together through a very intense collaborative process and with talking back and forth.
I
with
do know that
resources.
the internal auditor has worked on some of this, and so you might have a conversation with him because he's been able to pull up some of this information through the system. So maybe the two of you working on it together might help.
Thank you.
I guess I'll call myself. I have a question about the long-term vacancy position. So why would we have something on here for 3, 5, 8, 10, 11, 9 years? I mean, why doesn't it ever roll off? Can anyone answer that? Maybe y'all can't.
I think certain positions, for example, I hear the HR director speak often about our head electrician or head plumber. I think some of our positions, we have a hard time attracting real talent, and a lot of it's our salary structure. I think that's something that needs to be definitely improved to retain quality and qualified folks here at the city. I think some positions are just harder to get filled. Specific ones, I mean, this might be something that we actually need to have maybe Linda start coming with us so she can speak to specifics. Again, and I will say too, when we run this report, because it's so manual, the way our budget is set up or how our lines are treated, if it's a personnel cost or an employee, they get charged to one particular fund versus when they're a contracted staff. So when we try to go reconcile what's vacant versus what's being charged, it's hard to do that without being manual. So we're happy to work with Mr. Brewer here and see if there's not a better way to make this report more functional.
Thank you. Councilmember Spitzley?
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, I'm looking at these two, it seems like the administrative assistants or administrative specialists seem to be the hardest ones. You've had contract folks in the one for finance since 2011, and the same for police and some of the other ones. And so, you know, that's a long time for somebody to, is it the same person that's been there since 2011?
No, the person that's currently in, specifically the finance position, started around August or September. And to be really honest, we had about 3 vacant positions in finance when I started, and I took, in my mind, the highest priority, which are the accountant positions, to get filled first. The process in which HR has their postings is a time-consuming process for staff to fill. So right now, I focused on the finance people, get those folks in and working. This is the next one to go. So it's already in the queue right now for finance to get that position filled. I can't speak to police. I'm not sure if Samantha has any other information, but.
Well, those are just two. I think those are, to me, that's just to highlight that it's not just specialized positions. It's not just plumbing or electricians. There are positions on here, you know, that are not specialized positions that have been open for quite a long time. So again, I think it's been a recurring question that we've had, at least I've had, that I've been on council, about why does it take so long for these positions to be hired, to bring people in, and then we've had contract positions for such a long time.
Okay, moving on. Oh. Mr. Garza.
Thank you, Mr. President. So Shelby, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. And I know when we had a meeting earlier, I mentioned about the plumbing and the electricians. I mean, when we're offering a master plumber position for $35,000, and a licensed electrician position for $22,000. It's pretty hard
I get it.
to attract anybody for that price. I mean, you might be able to make that money at McDonald's, so. I appreciate maybe you having some further talks with Linda and seeing if we can't increase those prices so we can get some real talent here. It's been
Absolutely.
2018 for the plumbing, yeah. So, thank you, appreciate it.
Deputy Mayor Harkins.
And Councilmember, thank you. You're completely right that some of these salaries are certainly lower than we would like them to. We've talked about doing a entire review of all of our salaries, and they're based upon certain steps in our collective bargaining agreements, and it would be pretty expensive to have all of our positions reviewed. And so we agree with you, but based on our sort of current structure in terms of bargaining those positions and what the steps are for those positions, that we're kind of stuck there in our current process. So we're looking to have HR review all of those in a broader sense, but it's not inexpensive to do that. So.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. So I can speak to a bit about the quarterly budget to actual report that is due. This report, the actuals to date are also included as far as the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget amendment that I've also provided to you. And so I can go into more detail if you have any questions on the quarterly budget report. Yeah, so the quarterly budget report, that's the one with the graph in front of it.
You're going to go over the amendment first, though?
Yeah, but I'm mostly gonna focus on the amendment unless you have any questions on the quarterly budget report. I can go back to that. And so as far as the amendment goes, we have the current budget information as far as where we ended up last year, the adopted budget, and the actuals to date as of December 31st. And then I have the proposed budget amendment in the second to last column, and the final result with the amended numbers in the final column. Do you have
Is everyone looking at the right document? There's a document that
In
says
your packet, it's the red
1920
tabs
proposed.
document.
Just make sure we're all. So just to be clear too, Paul from Raymond just spoke to the first column, the FY19 actuals, which kind of speaks to why we're projecting what we are for 20. So one of the things that we wanted to do when we came for our last quarterly update was, really the financial statements for fiscal year 19 and for the budget for 20 were set before Jake and I even arrived. So one of the things that we wanted to do through this budget amendment process was really own the numbers for this year. We only have a few months left of this fiscal year. Of course, it's up June 30. So we really wanted to get a handle on where are we today and where are we going. We know we have a 5-year budget to present here in March, which we will do. So to kind of get ahead of it, we needed to figure out where we were, which is why there's a budget amendment before you tonight to review.
Are there any questions before I get started?
I have a question, but I imagine you'll answer it along the way, so.
Excellent. So starting up from the top, we have our property taxes. So these are received at the beginning of the year in July. We received additional collection fees in December. Our proposed amendment is $485,000. This takes into consideration additional chargebacks that may be due, as well as PA 425 agreements that are with our surrounding townships. The line below has income taxes, which has a shocking 2.4 million decrease from our original budgeted projections. This includes a couple of factors, primarily where we ended up last year versus the budgeted amount and what that result was in terms of setting our budget for the current fiscal year. And so this number is the number that we received from the Treasury Department based on their own internal projections.
That one drew a little bit of questions, so we'll start with Councilmember Wood.
I realize it's difficult for you to answer these questions, but I'm going to ask them anyways. During the budget process, your predecessors repeatedly, when we asked about these numbers, said that they fell within the range that they thought that we would be receiving. We talked about the fact that we knew East Lansing's income tax would have would cut into this, and we asked if they saw any other trends that were out there, and were assured that they aren't. Now we're looking at this number, and I realize some of this number, and it's not the entire thing, has to do with GM and the strike, but that is not anywhere close to what we're looking at. So, working within the department, how could the department come up with those figures that they presented and look us with a straight face and tell us to believe these?
I can't speak completely as to the decisions or the estimates that happened in previous years. I can say that this 2.4 million number is the compounding of the previous year's loss and the current year's estimate relative to their proposed budget. And so right now, there is the East Lansing income tax is in full effect. That has been estimated to be approximately an $800,000 a year impact on our budgetary line. This will impact City of East Lansing residents who are working in the City of Lansing, who would otherwise be paying, I think I have it backwards, City of Lansing residents working in East
Right.
Lansing, who would otherwise be paying a full percent to the city here, and now it's split 50-50 between them.
I'll also add, it appeared that both property taxes and income taxes were estimated at the same rate of about a 3% rate of inflation. So I think it was kind of just the general feeling that there would be some sort of increase. Also in conversations with the Treasury Department, I'm not sure how much their involvement went into making the projection either. So again, I mean, there's a million different ways to do a budget. I would say we're definitely taking the conservative approach. We certainly hope we're not down 2.4 from the original estimate, but to be conservative, that's where we think we're gonna fall. Speaking to, how or why they did, you're right, it is a tough question. It's hard for us to, understand or answer. I think it might have just been, I don't know, wishful thinking. I'm not sure exactly how and why we got here today.
Well, I wish I were 110 pounds, but that doesn't make it so.
Councilmember Spitzley, then Betts.
See, here's the thing, though. The income tax adjustment, that $2.4 million, that's a lot of money. And
800,000.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's just a gross level of incompetence that was in our previous budget person. And so you are now working and coordinating with Treasury, talking to them, because, we've heard that before, that, you work very closely with Treasury, but that number is that's a big number. And so for us to be told, different things in the past by the previous budget director is upsetting to me.
Councilmember Betts.
Thank you, Mr. President. $2.4 million comes out to be 6.1% drop. Do we expect that to be a one-time drop, or is there going to be some continual decrease in our projections in the future due to people switching to where they're moving or where they're working and whatnot?
I mean, this is definitely the hardest tax to project. It's the most volatile. Obviously, if the economy's doing great, so are we. So I think this is the hardest one. My recommendation, based on where we're at today, and where we think we will be when we end, as well as where we collected in 19, I would say hold the line, let's remain steady. So at this point, unless we see some huge increase over the next couple of months, my guess is that we'll probably have in the same number or thereabouts for this next year.
Thank you very much.
Moving on.
Yeah. So moving on, the next notable change is in state revenues. This is our revenue sharing. This number has just been adjusted slightly to account for the actual state appropriation and the constitutional revenue sharing that we have received to date. That is a $70,000 difference to our budget. And so as a net effect to our revenues, the gross amount is 1.9 million decrease. If anyone doesn't have any questions, I'll jump into the departmental expenditures.
Go for it.
Also, I'll just note, there's the narrative document that we're going to walk through. So as we've been making these different changes, the proposed adjustments, there's a narrative for each one. So if you want to follow along.
So going down the budget document a little further, there's an amount from the mayor's office. This is a transfer of a position, chief strategy officer from the mayor's office to finance. This should have no net impact on the budget. This is also a reclassification from operating expenditure in terms of contracted services to personnel, how it's been actually budgeted and implemented for the year. Skipping forward even further, there's a neighborhoods and citizens engagement. This is some transfer from salaries and fringes to from a vacant position to the contracted services that have supplanted that position.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Why are we, so there was a vacant position, and so the decision has been to hire a contract person in lieu of the vacant position? Is that what I'm understanding?
To my understanding, it's been a redesign of what they expected the vacant position to fulfill. And so the position has been established, and now as they're reimagining it, it's being provided in the form of contracted services. And so there may be changes coming forward in the next budget recommendation,
But yes, you've eliminated a city position, you've hired a contract person.
the vacancy still remains, but as of this time, the vacancy savings, because we're not going to be filling it for the remainder of the year, are going towards contracted services.
Councilmember Wood.
Is this vacant position the one that was just established in this budget?
It's the one that's vacant as of July 1st, 2018. So,
This is
2 years ago.
18.
So did the position that the mayor put in the budget for this fiscal year, has it been hired?
Deputy Mayor Harkins.
It has, yes.
Okay. So the position that was created in 2018 was, what we're hearing has never been hired, and we are contracting that work out.
Not as a one-to-one ratio, I imagine, but I could get you more specific details by communicating with the department if you.
I'd like to know what the position was designated would do, and who and what we're contracting out.
We'll get the specifics.
Thank you.
Anything further before we move on? Please go ahead, Jim.
Following further, we have a $250,000 decrease in the operating budget for economic development and planning. This is a reduction of our LEPFA subsidy. Finance and operations, that is a position transferred from the mayor's office. That kind of concludes our first page, if you have any questions there. Moving forward, human resources, we have an increase in operating expenditures. This is partially to fund some NeoGov training in terms of our new hiring system, and also for some payroll services, which following a retirement are being covered through contractual services at this time. Continuing forward, police and fire, you'll see an increase in personnel expenditures. This is a result to the actuarial evaluation of the Police and Fire Retirement Fund, which recommended an increased contribution to their pension plans. And so this is being recognized with our budget amendment. The total impact is about $560,000. Public service, you have some transfers from personnel expenditures to contractual services. Human relations and customer service.
Jake got a question there.
Yes.
There's no amount. What is the amount?
Oh, for public service, that'd be $300,000. It's a
Pardon?
net impact, it's a net zero impact on the budget.
Said 300,000.
300,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we're taking 300,000 out of a personnel line,
Mhm.
and we're contracting the services out. What employees are we not hiring, and what are we contracting out, and to whom?
Could get more specific details, but off the top of my head, I don't want to give you wrong information.
Okay.
Contracted services, I mean, as far as which positions, I think it's the overall vacancies of positions that they're not expecting to fill before July 1st. The contract itself is with Johnson Controls. to help with the climate action, environmental studies that we have going on in all of our buildings right now.
If we could get a list of what those are, I'd like to see those. Thank you.
Councilmember Dunbar.
So unlike the neighborhood engagement one, where it's the position that is creating the dollars that are being moved, the job is being served by a contractor. This is actual vacant employee budget that's being diverted to do climate action, and so those contractors are not doing the job that somebody at the city would have been doing in that position, that we unfunded or pulled the money from that vacancy.
Yeah, they're not replacing the vacancies.
Councilmember Wood.
Well, we just heard that there were issues. If we have extra money in the public service personnel account, that we're not paying enough to hire positions that need, that we need, such as an electrician and a plumber and things like that, we're not hiring those. So that's why I want a list of what those are.
Councilmember Jackson.
Peter, I know you're gonna be upset, but do you think I can ask a question back on police and fire?
Go for it.
I know you hate going back.
Move Lansing forward.
So just from my understanding, what, was it a financial health team recommendation to put 560 in, or was it unexpected retirements, or was it a market fluctuation?
Do you want me to take it?
You can take it. Yeah.
So when we have our actuary give us our information back on the valuation data that we provide them in the fall, it's always after the fact of the budget. So basically, the assumptions and the estimates for this year were off by about 560,000. So based on our actuary giving us the actual amounts that we'll owe this year, we were off by 560. So those are just making those adjustments to make sure we're funding our pensions fully.
You're not afraid of me?
I mean, you already opened the door. So, I guess, why would you be off 560? I know it's complicated.
Sure.
Equation, formula, all these different things, but what do you think it was?
Again, I didn't put the estimates in, so I'm not sure how or why the previous person came up with the estimation that they did. Our actuary does provide kind of an outlook for future years, so we'll certainly include those with our projections going forward. But I'm not sure how or why those numbers were baked in the way that they were. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Wood.
The actuarial is coming to the pension boards in March, is that correct? In March, and the Ways and Means Committee, which you sit on, will be invited to sit in at the pension board to go over the actuarial's report. So you'll be able to glean more information from that at that time.
Picking back up.
Picking back up, we have 80,000 in the Human Relations Community Service budget for temporary contracted services for personnel for the acting and deputy director. And that pretty much resolves all of the departmental changes.
One more question from Councilmember Wood.
Since the retirement of the director of Human Relations and Community Service and the retirement of the finance director, were there any incentives or buyouts or anything that was paid to them when they left employment?
None that we're aware of.
Could I have the administration answer that for the record?
No, there were not. I was vehemently shaking my head, but I realized that's.
I
not the record.
saw you, but I wanted to make sure that we all heard what the answer was. Thank you.
Jake, go ahead. Vacancy factor.
Yeah. So I've adjusted the vacancy factor by a factor of 500,000. Our fund balance policy technically recommends that if our fund balance should fall below 12% of expenditures, that we contribute an amount, 500,000, to our fund balance. While not technically in effect for this budget season, I figured that I would include that as part of our vacancy factor, that our first 500,000 of vacancies should be attributed towards restoring our fund balance. And so I've made that adjustment there.
Councilmember Wood?
And what is the estimate that you believe, without making that adjustment, we would be seeing in the vacancy factor if it remained the same by the end of the year?
Probably pretty close to the original estimate. I'm
700,000 in the original line here if we didn't adjust it down, about the same.
Okay, thank you.
Net transfers is an increase of 268,000. 100,000 of that is to cover potential administrative costs in administering our CDBG grant fund. An additional 168,000 is to fill the operating spending of the stadium fund, which is, as far as our audit concerned, rolled up into our general fund. So it should have no major impact. Looking at total expenditures as a whole, all the adjustments come out to $1.2 million increase. This is in addition to the $1.98 million decrease of expenditures for a net budgetary impact of $3 million, which will reduce our fund balance to approximately 4.9%.
Shelby, then.
So just before we take some questions on that, so you'll just note then that at the, originally, we had hoped to end fiscal year 19 with 17 million. We actually ended with 10, and then we're projecting our end of the fiscal year for 20 to be at 6.8 million. So we're going to be down to just below 5% in fund balance. So all that to say, we have a lot of work to do. We have a structural imbalance right now of about $3 million, meaning we're spending more than we're taking in by $3 million. So when we come to you with this next budget, we've got work to do. I want to make sure we're very, very clear about that as it relates to general fund.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood?
I want to go back real quick to the net transfers, the 268,000, which was part of the stadium fund. Is that the money that's owed because of the soccer lease, that our obligations to that?
No.
So we have that as well. That's
Okay.
built into the budget.
Yep, that would have ended in fiscal year 19. So that's not included in this. It would have happened last year.
Yeah, so the operating change happened last year, and so the transfer is to fill that gap in for the current year. And as far as I understand it, we're no longer providing soccer.
My understanding was the bills had not come in until December on those expenditures, which had to do with the turf as well as the advertising. Is that correct, Mr. Brewer?
I don't want to be speaking, I cannot remember the specific details on that. So like I said, it does sound familiar about the timeframe that you mentioned.
So those were expenditures that are coming out of the 1920 budget.
There were some expenditures that we did budget for the current year that did end up coming through before we canceled the soccer part of
Okay,
the.
so this is
And we did
on
pay
top
those
of
around
those
December.
expenditures.
This is included within. And so we budgeted for that amount, we paid that amount. We're actually going to pay less than that amount, the full contracted and budgeted amount.
We also had money that was left from the sale of the ramp.
Yes.
Has there been any discussion with using some of those dollars to offset some of these issues that we have, that we're looking at?
So the money from the sale of the ramp is currently sitting in the parking fund. There was, if I had to guess a round number, 3 or 4 million that we received. The majority of that was appropriated, and there's 1.3 million remaining as part of the parking fund balance. The parking fund balance last year grew from around 7 million to 14 million, and this year is budgeted to decrease back to around 7 million again. And so that 1.3 million from the ramp sale is included as part of the parking fund. And
But we had a lengthy discussion on the fact that that money was going into the general fund, was not staying in the parking fund. So the decision's now been made to leave it in the parking fund. Is that what because we bought equipment. We bought some equipment with that money. So I'm trying to figure out, where these things are.
The budget resolution approving the use of funds stated that the remaining amounts that were unappropriated would remain unappropriated, and so we have not used it to, we have not transferred that to the general fund, but it's remaining where it is.
So that's
But
a
it
long way to say
could-
that, yes, we're hoping to move that over to the general fund to help offset
That's what
some
I'm.
of these costs.
Okay, thank you.
He's very
Fine,
thorough.
check.
Councilmember Spitzley. You're all set?
Yep.
All right. Proceed.
I do see one other question here.
You've exhausted your number of questions for the evening. I'm sorry. Councilmember Jackson, do you have any? No?
Now, you
All right.
see, there's an advantage about
I know, I-
being up there.
Councilmember Wood?
I want to go back, I want to go to the end comment here on the recycling.
Yes.
We entered into an agreement that this MRF was going to be built, and the things with that, and there's a delay in this. Can we get some additional information about what the thought process is on this? Is this still moving forward with the MRF? Is this, how long is the delay? Have they purchased the land? All of those things that are out there.
Based on my conversation with the department director, it is expected to be completed by June or July of this year, so it should be implemented by the beginning of next year.
Okay, so we're paying additional dollars for trucking this right now.
Yes.
And we're not being compensated by the company because they have a delay.
I cannot speak to that, I don't know, off the top of my head.
We'll find out.
Yes.
Okay. And so in our agreement, Mr. City Attorney, is there anything in there, or could you look into that with a delay in the fact of moving forward with this, that we are paying additional dollars? Can we recoup some of those dollars from them?
I'll review the contract provisions.
Thank you.
All right. So I believe we've covered the stadium fund as a transfer from the general fund. The CDBG fund, we have grant money that is left over from previous years that is still available to spend. And so the budget amendment accounts for that money and also includes a general fund transfer as a contingency in case administrative costs run over a certain allowable threshold. Are there any questions? Seeing none.
Oh, Councilmember Wood. I thought we talked about this.
With looking at the community development block grant funds and the situation that we have with the HUD dollars, do we have any feeling on whether HUD's going to ask for those dollars back? And in moving those, can we utilize those dollars if they ask for that? Or is that something that's going to have to come out of the general fund?
Right now, I don't have any indication that they would ask for any sort of funding back. I would expect some audits to come in the near future, but at this point, I don't have any indication that any of these funds won't be available or we need to start budgeting in a different way for next year.
Yeah. Continuing on to the refuse fund is a factor of too much good news. Increased demand in our cart services have required us to purchase additional carts. So the cost of that is going to be offset mostly by additional revenue. However, there is additional cost. That pretty much concludes the changes to the budget amendment. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Councilmember Garza.
Thank you, Mr. President. So when you say that there's an increase in demands, does that count in the new carts that we're having ordering the tops for the smaller biweekly pickup?
Yes.
Do you know how much the cost that was?
The additional cost or the overall cost?
the additional cost to do the biweekly pickup for the smaller portion.
I'd like to look into that so I could give you a more specific answer, or more certain answer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, President. I just want to say, Shelby and Jake, thank you very much for coming out today. I do want to make us all cognizant that a 4.9% fund balance isn't great, and we have a recession coming. I am very confident that you two, under your leadership, you're going to turn this around, and we should be thinking about that future that's slowly creeping on us. Thank you.
On the refuge carts, wasn't there a problem with the tops? Was there it's my understanding that there were larger tops that came in and we had to reorder to get smaller ones. And if so, what was the cost on those and did we eat it or not?
I could get you an answer.
Yeah, we don't have that information. I don't know if you've heard of an issue at all, Samantha, no.
I heard there was an issue, but I don't have the cost information.
We can find out.
So if you could get that and give us that information too, thank you.
Does that conclude the budget amendment?
Yes.
Any other questions on the budget amendment or the quarterly report, or the vacancy factor, excuse me? All right, moving on then. Thank you very much. We have here a discussion to place on file the City of Lansing's 2019 annual report. Did we get that, Sherry?
It was referred, but it's so large.
Okay, okay. I need a motion.
I would move to place the annual report on file.
It's been moved by Councilmember Wood to place the annual report on file. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Is there any other business before the committee this evening? With that, at 6:47, we are adjourned. We'll see you all back here at 7.